Hey guys, welcome back to Vinceville Custom. So today I'm sharing with you a Rose Street Fighter 4 statue that I sort of produced and put together myself. It was sculpted by Coram AV. This actually was pretty much set up and done back, I think, in, I want to say around 2013 to 15, maybe 2014, actually, maybe 13. I forget exactly when I did this. It's never really been finished until now. I'm going to kind of explain my little sob story about how this came to be. But back in 2010 to 2011, I moved down South Jersey. I was renting, and then I decided to purchase a house in 2012, and sadly 6 months later, they closed the company down. So at the time, I purchased a house, I built a studio, I was doing more statue work, I was loving it, I was able to come home from work, and I had a whole setup in the house to do stuff. And once they closed down the company, I was on unemployment, I was trying to find some work, I was selling my collection, I was doing a whole couple things, but as time went on, I started getting more and more statue work. And it got to the point where when unemployment was ready to be up, I had more than enough statue work that I can actually handle, and actually I realized I can make a living off of it. So I decided to just, whatever. I didn't want to turn like 65, 70, like if I get older and say, back in the day I should have just took the chance and did statue work, like my grandmother always said, when one door closes, another one opens. So basically, I decided to take on statue work. So as I started taking on more statue work, I wanted to actually learn more about casting, molding, producing a statue, designing, and stuff like that. So I decided to sell a bunch of my collectibles and use those funds to actually make myself a rose statue. Now, I contacted Coram AV because he was sculpting a lot of stuff for people at the time, and it was kind of really early stages of 3D sculpting. So he had a Psylocke sculpt in his portfolio I really liked, and I asked him, would you use that and tweak it into a rose? So he did, and I decided at the time to really use it as a sort of a learning item. So I can learn how to mold, I can learn how to design, cast, I can actually learn how to put kits together, maybe add a cloth to the item and do like crazy amounts of stuff. And I said this would be a great tutorial and a YouTube series as well. It's kind of like my, whole like learning on how to do this stuff, really learn how to, produce a statue, take the Photoshop file that the sculptor sends me, tweak it in Photoshop and say, hey, change this, tweak that, and this is kind of what I'm looking for. Instead of just saying, hey, can you fix this? And the sculptor's like, I don't know what the hell that guy's talking about. So I had all these YouTube videos that I was working on. It was like almost a 7-part series, I think, at the time. And my old 2008 Mac Pro was crapping out on me. iMovie kept crashing. A lot of footage got corrupted, and everything just went to hell. And I just got to the point where I just kind of walked away from the item. I had it pretty much collecting dust. I was like, man, I did all this work. I had all this video footage. I had all this stuff, and everything just kind of went kaput. So I decided back in 2019 when I got my new iMac computers and stuff that I would actually get these finished up and sort of just kind of explain what's going on, and you can kind of see what's up. With all the sculptors out these days and Onage, because Onage is the one that printed and casted this for me, but with all the sculptors and digital talent out there now, I probably would have done this a whole completely different way than what it is here. I could probably have had her more in a little bit of an action pose, maybe have the, her orbs spinning around her, instead of just like trying to set up the orbs kind of floating the way I did here. Maybe have like a clear resin thing that's kind of like behind her, that kind of like sticks in her back or something, and that the orbs are kind of going around her, maybe her holding up the playing cards. So there's a lot of things I would do differently now, but it was a good learning experience. It was just a good idea to sort of kind of really dive into the hobby and learn, because like stuff like this, where you're really going to learn it, there's no schools you can go to. You can only do like YouTube videos, or you could go to Smooth On, but you really have to dive into it. You really got to get the equipment, you got to get used to the resins, the molding, and really learn from trial and error, because a lot of the guys out there that do it for a living, they're in other states and other countries. How am I going to go out there to spend time with them and really bother them, So it's something you really got to dive into. So I really wanted to make it where I would have like a surplus of her. I was planning on doing like 10 castings just for myself. I wanted to have all her Street Fighter 4 colors and just have them all over the house, but things went crazy. And I also use this as an experiment to find belt buckles and make my own leather belts for these, because she actually does have a sculpted belt, but I wanted to try to Also learned how to put cloth on it. So hunting down these belt buckles was a nightmare. I had to find a website in China where you had to order like 50 of them. You couldn't just order like a couple. And then I also had to learn on how to use magnets and really get all these pieces magnetized together. I was also going to do a base where it would say Rose in Street Fighter 4 and a nameplate. I had a guy at the time I met like down a little bit further south from me that does nameplates. I was going to use him, but like I said, everything went crazy. So, but she is pretty much in scale with like the Pop Culture Shock stuff. She stands about from the bottom of her foot up to about 8 inches, 18 inches tall. So these bases right here are just generic bases I made up for her. This is something I had from I think it was the Faith Buffy base. I think that's what that base is from. These are just some generic bases I made for her. So yeah, it's a grail item for me. I've always wanted Rose, but it was just one of these things that got so frustrating because I lost everything that I wanted to do for YouTube and really share my whole experience of how this came to be. But in the end, I think it worked out pretty well. I finally got a Rose for my collection. It's kind of more of, you know, a little bit more of a comic looking type of a character, more than like the Street Fighter 4. But now that I think about it, and after Pop Culture Shock, I think it was when Jerry owned Pop Culture Shock, he talked about they were actually letting him use the Street Fighter 5 files. And I figured like now if I was to really do it, I would see if somebody can rip like the Street Fighter 4 file and sort of kind of tweak it and go from there. I also used this as an experience to actually cast up clear resin. This was kind of like learning how to use clear resin. So if you can see in here, there's actually a marble in there, a pearl like plastic marble in there, and there's also one at the bottom here. What I wanted to do is I wanted to create a clear resin ball like the Street Fighter 4, but actually have something in the center of it. So there is a pearl ball, white one in this one. Over on this one over here, there is actually blue marbles in it. So you can kind of see in there, there's actually a blue marble, and then I painted it up in some translucents, some interferences and stuff. So it kind of looks like a glowing ball. And this one over here is just actually clear resin. There's nothing in it. So like I said, it's an early design. It's based off the Street Fighter 4. I wanted her to sort of be like more of a, you know, just kind of like, just have her hand at her hip holding up the ball type stuff. But like I said, I would definitely change up a lot of stuff these days. So if I ever, you know, decide to take another dive in there and commission a sculptor, I would probably go really way different than what I did here. So this is kind of more of like the elegant, almost comic book looking Rose. But I mean, this face is actually based off the comic book from Udon, the one cover art they did. So I actually sent that to Kuram. And I said, can you copy that face? And I think he did an absolutely amazing job of copying that face from that comic cover. It's actually amazing. Now, her hair piece, you know, like the hair piece, that's something else I would have kind of like redone and decided to do. Even Onage probably would have done a better job of probably now of cutting it. So right now, this hair piece was really, really long, like really long out to here. And then after I put it all together, I realized it was just too crazy. So I actually cut it. It's actually glued in there, and I actually casted these up with a metal rod, which was one hell of an experience. It took a lot of tries to get that metal rod in there, but I wanted to make sure that they were durable, at least durable to the point, you know. But I think now what I would have done is maybe design the hair a little bit better where it wasn't like this and actually like breakable. She does break down though. I did do it where this head is magnetized on each one, so you can see it's pretty much magnetized from there. Her arms are magnetized as well, so I set up with arms in there. And the way you do it is this arm comes out, and then what you do is you put this arm in here. There's a magnet in here holding this in, so I did another magnet. And what you do is you kind of slide this in, and then you put this arm up there, and it kind of stays. So this holds in by a magnet, and this just rests on the arm over here. So it was a little tricky, you know. Like I think now, if I was to send something like this to Onage, I think they would have actually keyed it up a lot better than what they did. I think they would have actually had a lot more like areas where they would have keyed it in and magnetized everything where it would all be better. But this was very, very like cut down to the point where it's not like what Onage can do these days. Her legs are glued in at the bottom, so they did cut them in there, but there was a problem where when we casted them up that the legs were really hard to get in there, so I had to do a lot of chiseling. And then, like I said, I created these belt buckles just for fun. It was just a good experiment. So I had to like actually sand down the belt buckle that was there and find leather and do all this stuff. Yeah, it's a good learning experience. Like you know, if you want to get into the hobby and you want to make your grail, but if you really want to dive into it and learn how to mold and cast, you know, you could find yourself a 3D sculptor. You could do the whole thing as like, this is the character I want. You could contact ownage and go all that, but it gets expensive. So honestly, the amount of money that I put into this is more of sort of like, I consider it like a school of teaching than actually like, oh, okay, I'll never get my money back or anything. It was a good learning experience. So I wouldn't be where I am today with the knowledge of molding and casting and being able to do everything I do now without actually producing and doing this type of item. So like I said, it's a really great you know, item that I've been able to do. I just wish that I was able to show you guys in all the videos, but I'm actually doing a lot more videos now these days, and I'm really doing all these work in progresses, so you get to see everything that's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to pull out one of my kits. So I think I have maybe 3 or 4 good kits left that I could probably put up on my website if anyone's interested. It's going to be some work to put them together. It's not like an ownage item where you pop it out of the ownage box and you paint and you're done. You're going to have to put a little love and work into it. And she doesn't have any bases for it either, so you would have to make up a base. But I have a kit next to me here, which is kind of one of the ones where I really destroyed and I didn't cast it correctly. But I could pull it out and I can show you guys the breakdown and everything that it looks. So let me get that set up and give you a little bit more idea of like what I went through. Okay, so here is one of the resin pieces that actually kind of like one of my bad ones. So this actually was going to be used for the flamingo dress. So if you ever played Street Fighter 4, they had alternate outfits. And I love the flamingo dress for Rose. It was one of my favorite alternate outfits of all time. I used it all the time. So anytime I played, it was the flamingo dress or it was the blue rose you just saw in the center. I think that was color 7. I've always loved the flamingo dress in Street Fighter 4. So I wanted to see if I can actually make this rose statue and then take one of these and make a flamingo dress off of it. So maybe sometime down the line I will actually revisit this and make that flamingo dress. Unless a company out there will actually make a rose statue, and if it's an amazing statue, I will buy like 2 or 3 of them, and I will paint them the colors I want, and then maybe make a flamingo dress. Because I love the Street Fighter 4 game, I love the outfits, and I love the designs. I actually think they just introduced Rose into Street Fighter 5. I sort of like this model of her, but I think I like Street Fighter 4 better. I think Rose in Street Fighter 4 was a little bit more adult, sexy, kind of more a little realistic, whereas Street Fighter 5 is kind of going back toward the alpha look. I don't know. So either way, it doesn't really matter. So this original sculpt, as you can see, there's a belt buckle here, and one of the mistakes with this was the way it was sculpted was actually above there, so when it was printed, there was a hollow part under here, so when they make the molds, it got all messed up. So that was a mistake there. It should have been actually flat, but I didn't catch it at the time until we did the molding and casting. And then when I actually outsourced the molds, though. I didn't actually make these molds, but I needed to see how molds were actually made. So I sent this out to Joel, who is known in the hobby, and he does a lot of molding castings back in the day, and he actually helped me over the phone of how to pour in resins and explain stuff to me. So he was a great teacher at the time too. So I really appreciate that. But you can see what happened is when I was pouring in this resin, I actually got the faster setting resin and it cured before I even got up to here. So you can see this is all hollow and messed up. So that was kind of like a learning experience there. So I was like, okay, for the larger stuff, I got to get the you know, slower setting resin instead of the faster. So this body part here, the way Onage did it was they actually cut it up over here like that. So this kind of connects into here like so. But you can see it's not casted up correctly and it's not going in flush, sort of, as you can see. So that was something they did. Like I said, if Onage was to actually get this piece now, I bet they would cut it and they would magnetize it way better than what they did back in the, you know, 2013 era, you know, like that. So her left arm, as you can see, what happened is there's a little bit of a cut here for the belt buckle. So that kind of goes on there like underneath the buckle. So what I had to do for these 3, I actually had to fill this in with some Aves, so this way it goes over that leather belt that I made. This leg here, as you can see, goes underneath like this. So that connects under there. And then what happened was I pulled out the mold too fast and wasn't really cured, and then I warped it from there, which would be easy fixed with some aids and some sanding. But so the problem is, you see how this kind of comes out? It scrapes this area here, and it scrapes underneath there. So what I had to do for all these three, I had to kind of sand down her butt areas and stuff, so this way it can go in here without scraping anything. You can see on her head, you know, I got some air bubbles around here. There's some underneath here, so that stuff I didn't really realize how to cast. There's only a tiny hole for her hair. That was a kind of a mess up. You can see here too, for you know, learning how to get that resin in there, there's a huge air bubble that I messed up with all that. So that's kind of like, this whole idea is, when I was going to make the flamingo dress with this, I was going to scrap the scarf and actually have the seamstress make me a, you know, like a really silky scarf with wires in it. So that's kind of where I was at with that. So the last thing is the clear resin. Now, clear resin was a beast altogether. That was another learning curve because of this stuff. Clear resin is very toxic. It's not, you can't really just mix up a little tiny clear resin. You got to mix up enough. You got to go by ratio. So what happened was, I wanted to get these balls in here, right? I wanted to get these clear, you know, these like pearls in there, so it looks like it's got something in the center. So what I did was I casted a ball, and then what I had to do is I dremelled a hole in it. But the problem was is I don't have drill press. So I was doing it by hand, and every time I drilled in a hole, it was going at the wrong angle. So then what I did is I poured in some clear resin, and I put the pieces down there so you can actually see how it goes. But the problem was is I didn't get them in correctly. So that was kind of like my idea. You know, it's kind of a, it's a hell of a learning curve, you know. But I finally got a rose in my collection. But I'm always welcome to, you know, if any producers out there or main companies actually make some rose statues, I would love to get a couple more. But that's kind of everything that's going. So that's kind of where we're at. So let me get them set up and we'll kind of close out the video. Alright, so there you go. That is the rose statue. So we'll kind of go over some of the paint work real quick. So I used Garage Kit flesh tones for the face, the eyes. She sort of has like, you know, purplish type eyes, so I kind of ran with that. This is, I think, color 7 of her outfit, which I always played. So I wanted the blue with the white scarf and the yellow buttons. I wanted to keep it true to the game. You can see what I did with the balls there, the orbs. Her outfit, you know, she's got sort of like a spandex sort of like bodysuit on. So that's kind of what I went with. The lights are really reflecting it a lot, but it's really not as bright in person. So I wanted to give the blue version, which is my main one, sort of like a bronze type base. A little bit of a marble-ish base. I painted that on a live stream. And you can pretty much see what I did with the red one. So this is pretty much her main color of Street Fighter 4. So that's kind of what I like. I think Street Fighter 5, they gave her spandex jumpsuit outfit more of a brighter blue, which I kind of like the Street Fighter 4 look, which was kind of like a black sort of a spandex look. For the buttons on these, I went a little bit more of a gold yellow on them instead of just the yellow, just to kind of like separate a little bit more. Basic red, and then just some marble bases, just pretty simple. You know, real quick, the marbles do come out of the base. You know, it's just sort of you know, I kind of just did a little hole like that, just for fun. But that's kind of like what I came up with back then. But everything now would have been completely different. So that is my rose statue. Let me know what you guys think. Hopefully some statue companies out there will actually say, you know what, let's make a rose statue. I'd love to see some 1/4 scales rose, either by Pop Culture Shock or what is it, HMO's making those amazing statues. I think Prototype Z is showing off a lot of stuff, so I keep on telling Eric he's got to make a rose. And if they really make an amazing rose and it's like a grail, I would definitely buy like 2 or 3 and make a flamingo dress out of one of those for myself. So that is my rose statue. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for listening to me if you got this far. Sadly, I wish I could have shown the whole work in progress, but it's a done deal. But we have a lot of other videos coming out over the next year, and hopefully we'll get into some more details and stuff as we go. So thanks for watching, and we'll be back with some more videos.